And welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. I hope you're doing all okay. Sky, Johnny, welcome back once again. We've had a full-throttled, full-actioned week two. I mean, two Monday night games. That's pretty groundbreaking for the NFL. We had the Saints and the Panthers play last night. Obviously, the Saints beating the Panthers, and the Steelers and the Browns play, with the Steelers coming away against the Cleveland Browns. So there's hope on the horizon for lowly Pittsburgh fans like me. My cat's meowing away in the background. Just ignore her. I'm sure she'll be fine. She's probably a Brown supporter anyway. It's probably why she's moaning around. Thank you, both of you, once again, for joining me. We'll do our usual thing, bring a topic to the table, and we'll chat about it. We'll go to Johnny first this week because he is his topic is the leading title today. Who will be your 2023 MVP? Very early, but I mean, the conversation starts now, Johnny. I mean, some people might want to bet on it. Andrew was down for the weekend with me, and we were talking about bets that he made prior to the season for Offensive Player of the Year and stuff like that. And it was interesting the lines you could get still.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously we're still in that stage so early on in the season, and there's going to be so many bold takes, which I think probably 10 weeks down the line may have changed. But yeah, I think obviously after 2 weeks with the usual front runners for the MVP awards, Patrick Mahomes, the obviously reigning MVP from last year. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, they've all started. Joe Burrow as well, another huge example. They've all started the season in very shaky fashion. I think, particularly Jalen Hurts, who obviously has helped guide his team to 2-0, hasn't looked, I think, anywhere near the sort of standard that we saw last season. I mean, obviously that can change. Patrick Mahomes as well, very shaky against the Lions, and the Chiefs, weren't at their best against the Jaguars either. So I think there's, a few emerging candidates. I think the one that everyone has been talking about, and such an impressive start it's been for the Miami Dolphins, their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, can never get the name right, but he's the new favorite, isn't he, for the MVP award? I think, according to many sort of betting sites. Obviously played well again against the Patriots. Obviously looked like a close game. We were talking with Sky, but I think the Dolphins, came to a fairly comfortable victory, compared to what the scoreline sort of suggests. I think what we've sort of seen over the last couple of weeks is, that star players really matter in the NFL. And I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd love to see more attention being, on the MVP award being given to the star players. We've seen, Christian McCaffrey look incredible. Tyreek Hill, exactly the same. Two of the front runners for the Offensive Player of the Year, but I think they should get more recognition in what they do and what they bring. And, I think both players I've mentioned take them out of the team. And I think that the Dolphins and the 49ers are a lot weaker respectively. So, that plays into the whole argument of the Offensive Player of the Year. The MVP winner. Micah Parsons as well. I've seen Dak Prescott's stock has been increasing. The Cowboys look such a well-oiled machine, but again, without Parsons, who's probably become the best defensive player in the league, I don't think the Cowboys are the team they're at. So I think there's definitely some early and a bit out there suggestions for the MVP award. Long may it to continue, because I like this change about the NFL. It's good to have a bit of variety every now and again. So yeah, we'll see where's Tua stocks at in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I was just looking because I didn't know this, so I thought I'd just double check it. But the last time a non-QB won the MVP award was Adrian Peterson in 2012, and he rushed for 2,097 yards that year. There's a load of other things here. Sigma Corps have won 14 of the past 15 MVPs, 19 of 23 since the turn of the millennium. No wide receivers, tight ends, O-linemen, off-ball linebackers, or DBs have ever won the award. So we'll touch on Tua first. I mean, the problem with Tua Tagovailoa, but we've had for a long time, is his injury history. That's unfortunately been, it was a massive thing for Martin before he even came into the NFL. And he seems to, Mike Daniels, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, seems to have got the team playing to a way that suits Tua. And I think for him to succeed, that is what he would need, is a coach who's going to run the team in a way that suits him. Obviously, last year he got marred of injury again. I mean, it's very early, isn't it, Johnny, with him, because there's always that cloud that hangs over to it, even though he is a very capable quarterback, maybe not edging towards top 10 in the league, maybe. But, I mean, quarterbacks have won it before who I don't think have been the shining star quarterback, but they are efficient in their team. Do you think that there is an argument that do you think it does get weighed up, star talent and efficiency and sort of team situation?
Definitely, I definitely think team situation has a massive part to play. I think if we look over the last, 5, 10, going back 10 years, invariably the MVP winner is of a team that is at the top end of the NFL leaderboards going into the off season, and I think if I'm saying this for the perspective, I don't think Tua will win the MVP, but he deserves to be right up there because the Dolphins are playing so well. But of course, I think there are better players on that team who probably contribute more than Tua necessarily. I think he obviously leads. I think quarterbacks in points this season. He's only thrown 4 touchdowns and a couple of interceptions, but I think they've played in 2 big games, and Tua is obviously the leader within that team. And I think as we said, the Dolphins are playing a lot more to his strengths, which is able to help him in the team. So I think definitely the team, how the team's doing, will have a huge impact on how it does in the end of the year. But I've been enjoying watching the Dolphins this year. I think they are creeping up the leaderboards in the AFC for a lot of people. I'm very worried in the as I'm sure Sky is, that they'll be the team to grab the East, the AFC East this year, because they just they look probably the most complete team that I've seen so far in the division.
And then moving on to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, talk about a player who's just been phenomenal for a long time, and unfortunately, though, has again been injury marred as well. This is a team of stars. We've spoke about it in the last few weeks. With Debo, Kittle, Brandon Ayuk I chatted about last week, CMC. I mean, Brock Purdy's definitely not shied away, even though I thought there was a risk that he could definitely regress this year. Do you think what sort of season do you think he needs to get to be in the serious conversation for an MVP award?
Yeah, I think you've got to put up absurd numbers, as you mentioned, Adrian Peterson.
Sorry, just to add, a couple of seasons ago, he nearly had 1,000. He did have 1,000 yards receiving and 1,000 yards rushing, and he got. I think he got offensive player of the year that year, but still didn't get MVP. It also shows how much the change has been from 2012 to now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm not sure on his rushing stats, his receiving stats so far this year, but I know that he's got well over 250 yards so far this year. He's on track to, completely eclipse that 2,000 rushing yards mark. And we know how much of the threat he is on screenplays. Even at times that wide. I think he's looked in both games the superstar for me. I thought Deebo Samuel had a great game as well against the Rams. He needs to put up those numbers as much as we can talk about how effective he is in play. He needs to be the leader in rushing and touchdowns. I think in his position at least, but he's such a versatile player and he brings so much to the team. I think he is an anomaly within the current quarterbacks. I know we can come on to how good Bijan Robinson looks as well. But he's a player that I think everyone would love on the team, and he just makes the 49ers, even as star-studded as you mentioned, just that one-dimensional, another dimensional better.
I mean, doing some very, very spotty maths and obviously inconsistencies throughout the season, he would be on track to around about 2,300 yards rushing. I mean, if he did that and 1,000 yards in the air, I mean, he's got to be in the conversation, hasn't he? He will certainly be in the conversation for the offensive player of the year. I mean, that seems pretty improbable, but I mean, stranger things have happened in the NFL. It's a wild, wild west world out there. Scott, feel free to jump in if to ask Johnny anything if you want to, or add your opinion to this.
The McCaffrey one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Dolphins, I stay quiet for a reason because I think I'm officially a Dolphins hater now. So I'm going to keep quiet and hope that all unravels. But McCaffrey, completely agree. He's probably the only player outside of the quarterback, so I'd probably make a case for to get the MVP. But I think he has to break that Eric Dickerson record. I mean, Peterson, what's that famous video when he missed it by 8 or 9 yards? The record, I think. Because obviously when Dickerson done that was a 14-game season. I think to justify giving it to a non-quarterback, a running back who will be McCaffrey, probably the only one this season, would have to break that record for, I think the media to even be crowning a running back MVP. But yeah, it's more than possible we're doing it. I think I disagree with what you said, Freddie. There's the injury concern there, right? I mean, we've unfortunately seen Austin Eckler has been banged up a bit. There was a Nick Chubb thing last night. No, that's obviously a bit more of a serious injury and not a niggle with, say, hamstrings or quad, etc. But these things can happen at that position. So hopefully he stays healthy. I think the other concern for me there, as much as I think he can win it, is I just think the Niners are that good. Will they just rest and rotate him towards the end of the year and give Mitchell a few more carries? I know the players always obviously have a bit of dispute with coaches come that point, but the main thing for the Niners now is getting a Super Bowl ring. They've been competitive for so long now, but just not got over that final, hump. So I think that might take bigger priority come the end of this season.
And the record you referred to is rushing yards in a season. That was in 1984. Eric Dickerson, 2,105 yards. I mean, I think in a 17-game season you can do it. The only problem is now it's just not as like TJ Watt breaking the sack record the other year. It just doesn't feel as impressive now because it is a 17-game season and there is more time and more opportunity to do it. I still think that these achievements should be celebrated, like no question about it. I think it shouldn't be, black cloud over the fact that we now have more games and everything like that. I think any achievement that is a record breaker, it should be celebrated. But I think it would have to be that. I think for him to be in the MVP conversation, for not him to be the MVP conversations, but for him to be the actual MVP, I think it would take that higher level of play to get to there, I suppose. So yeah, I mean the odds are all online as well. We do a betting show as well. So if you ever want to ask our guys over the betting show about if there's some bets or some odds that look a bit too good to be true in terms of the awards and stuff like that, make sure you DM us on any of our social media. Sky is also on that show as well, and he's always available to chat betting. I know he loves doing it and wins enough money. So,
don't know about that.
You have to be giving people a reason to talk to you. You don't need. Don't message him if you're. You're not going to go, Sky, how can I lose my money? Like you're going to go.
Yeah, that's true. I'm better at helping other people. I always say that, just not myself. So yeah.
Done yourself dirty there. I'm sure he wants to win it this week.
Everyone wins more when they bet with other people's money. Like everyone knows that, surely.
Yeah, it's easier to help people when you're giving advice. Same with fantasy all the time. I never, if someone gives me a dilemma between two players or a bet, I feel like will look at the stats and can give an honest answer. When it's myself sat there at 1 a.m. logging on to Sky Bet or logging on to Yahoo, like benching Amari Cooper because of those fake rumors that came out.
Man, don't get me started.
Cost me my matchup. But enough. Yeah. We won't go into that.
As a fantasy chat for another fantasy time, I suppose. We'll move on to you, Sky. What topic are you bringing to the table this week to talk about?
So I just wanted to go through. Well, my first hot take ties into. I was going to ask about. Well, obviously Johnny talked about Tua, and I think none of the star quarterbacks have really stood out. And I think we're looking at people like, I don't know, who's the best quarterback you guys think you've seen? I think like Cousins, Goff. These are the guys who've performed. I mean, what Cousins did to the Eagles, I know even though they lost, he was playing insane. And I think he's not going to win the MVP, but one of my bold takes that I messaged Adam about, obviously it wasn't on last week, was about Jordan Love. I'm so impressed with him over these first two games. And I think that come the end of his career, you have more rings than Aaron Rodgers. I know he's only got one ring, but this is just how I feel. I think he's learned under him. Rodgers, unfortunately, is probably not going to win another one. Sorry, Johnny. I hope he comes back healthy. I would have loved to see him have a full season at the Jets, genuinely, because I was excited, even though they're rivals. But to come back from that, I know he's talking about being back by the playoffs, but I think, he's about to turn 40. I think Jordan Love, you can tell the Packers just got lucky. They've gone from Favre to Rodgers to another guy who, even looking at his throwing motion, I feel like you can just tell that he's watched Rodgers. The quarterback coaches have worked on him. Like, he seems really viable. And we're talking about a guy who's had Watson out for the first 2 weeks, who was the guy being talked up all off season. Aaron Jones was out this week, and they're still only lost by a point to the Falcons. So, yeah, I like what I've seen there. So I'm all on the Jordan Love hype train. That's my first bold take.
I mean, part of that will circle back to what I said last week about Zach Wilson not being the same Zach Wilson that we've seen in other seasons, but he looks like he's taken in everything Aaron Rodgers said and been around him. Well, he's only had a couple of months of that. Jordan Love has had 2-3 years of tutorage under Aaron Rodgers. How good a teacher Aaron Rodgers is we don't really know. We've only seen what we've seen on Hard Knocks, and we can only see what the influence has been. But I mean, that's very, very bold. I mean, the defense. What would the scenario need to be? You need what? A schedule that suits you, a bit of luck, obviously.
What with the situation? I thought, sorry.
For the Packers, go ahead.
No,
sorry.
The situation, of course.
I think I just paused. I think that was just my mentality, just taking a little break for a moment because I suddenly lost all train of thought.
I think it's fair.
Thinking, I mean, what do like? Because Matt LaFleur's, I hate when people say he's not a good coach. I think he's a very good coach.
Oh, he's great.
A lot of people said it was all Rodgers, not him. I think he's a very good coach. You can see that from the defense they put out year on year. Their defense has not got Jair Alexander's name. But they've not really had huge stars on that team. They've drafted a lot of defensive players a lot of the time, but it has been a consistently good defense. Okay, they've not drafted a wide receiver in the first round, but now they've got people like Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs. I mean, Schoonmaker looked pretty decent. I'm not saying this year's the year, but do you really have that much confidence in him that he could?
I think just because the Packers, I can't believe I'm about to talk them up on this. I mean, they talk about title town when most of them were in the 60s, but they've got a pull, right? In terms of like being with Vince Lombardi, etc.
Yeah.
When I wrote it down, I had to say he'd get more, but I did write the same or more when I text Adam. But the same is a bit of a cop out because Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers both only have one ring. So, but I think it's possible for him to go on, and I mean the scenario needs to be continuing to build the youth through the draft. They've got a great trio of pass rush. I think the defense is underrated. But just sticking to that and being a bit more aggressive, I think now they might have learned from the whole Aaron Rodgers thing with him taking a restructured deal with the Jets and trying to get free agents in. I'd love to know if any of these conversations have ever happened in Green Bay over the last 8 years, because all people would talk about was Tom Brady taking pay cuts. Peyton Manning did at the end of his career, but Rodgers never really tended to do that in Green Bay. So I think now they've got a young guy who they can build around. They just need to ensure that they do it in the draft and be a bit more aggressive in free agency. If they're not limited by the cap space of, paying someone like Aaron Rodgers, they can obviously build elsewhere. I mean, time-wise, obviously, for the Packers, we're looking at probably a couple of years. The Lions are going to be the go-to team in the North. We'll see what happens with Cousins and the Vikings. But, I mean, I think he will stay. But if he doesn't, and the Bears continue to be the Bears, because I think everybody's off that hype train already with how bad they've started, the Packers could easily be the second best team in that division, next year already.
The problem is with free agency is you can change everything in Green Bay, can't change the weather though. It's the only thing. Like it's not
You've got good cheese,
it's not desirable.
Or whatever. And yeah,
Good
the
cheese, yeah,
drinks, old fashions. Yeah, if they're whiskey guys like me, I don't know. I'd play for Green Bay.
but I just don't. I don't know whether I can see this. I just don't. I don't know in my heart.
Not even one ring.
I just don't. I do always bang on about the.
Brent Dilfer's got a ring. Jordan Love can get a ring.
I don't mind the shot. I don't mind the shot. I definitely think they are entering the conversation of a genuine playoff contender this year in the NFC, because we know how wide open it is. Obviously, outside of the 49ers, the Eagles don't look the same team as last year. I'm sure they'll find their rhythm, but Packers could definitely get into, they're leading. Obviously they lost this weekend, but they're on track to be top 1, 2 in the NFC North. So with how Jordan Love's playing, I can certainly see them causing a bit of a stir this year, when obviously the expectations were so low. Again, I think it does come back to, it could be going to be a couple of years off. I think they've got a lot of inexperience on offense. We know how good Aaron Jones has looked as well so far this season, but I don't think they're too far away. I really don't. There's been really good breath of fresh air, and like Sky said, I'd like to see them aggressive. They're always a team that I think I liked, because I liked watching Rodgers, and now obviously he's come to the Jets, incredible, but injured, whatever. So I'm all for Green Bay doing okay.
We've got one.
You got another crazy theory you're working on over there?
Oh, me. Well, more crazy theories. So I'm gonna be honest on. Well, I'm gonna give you 2 in 1. It's about teams' chances, right? So last week, after watching the Chargers and the Bengals, I was thinking one of these teams is not making the playoffs. The AFC's too stacked. After this week, I'm thinking both maybe. I mean, if Joe Burrow doesn't play next Monday, the Rams could beat them. They're 0-3. And the Chargers, I'm not going to keep banging on about Justin Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback. The stats are there to back it up over the first 2 games. People said he's had the chance to win both games, but, I think the rest of the defense, and Staley's supposed to be a defensive-minded head coach, and they are awful defensively. Like, he is the one holding that team back. And I think the Bengals have almost got to a point where they've been doing so well, but now it seems like injuries are starting to hit them. And it could be one of those sort of seasons where it just doesn't work out. So I'm thinking maybe both of them miss out, because the AFC is so competitive. And I'm going to definitely say at least one. And they're 2 teams I was sold on before week 1.
I could buy that.
Yeah, I like it. The AFC is so stacked, isn't it? I actually think Justin Herbert's been good, like you say. What I've seen. A couple of brilliant touchdown throws to Keenan Allen the weekend. I literally just do think it is the play call and the coach that they've got and the defense, how they've set themselves up. It's just awful. And they've got so many good players on D. It's so annoying, actually, the Chargers. They're like my
it bugs me.
Ick, because I'm quite rooted for them as well, because they are a team with studs and a young QB who looks electric. They just let us down.
They should be good. But Freddie's going to hate my next one, and I might have to backtrack, but I'm an honest man. So I'm going to tell you what I wrote last week, right? Last week I wrote Steelers and Giants will both have losing records.
Okay.
But the Steelers defense did turn up last night. But I have to admit, I think I wrote this in one of our chats, where the Steelers and Browns defense is just that good because the quarterback play was so bad from Pickett and Watson. Because I don't know if it was 3 a.m. me, 4 a.m. me, but there was a part of me that was like, this is awful. Neither of them can move the chains. What is going on? But then I guess they both know each other well. They're rivals. But the Giants, I mean, they are basically the epitome of the typical team. They won the offseason, right? Everyone's taught them up. They've got better, this and that. Their schedule's harder this year. Then, like Seattle were a bit sort of last season, a team where I don't want to say people took them lightly, but they took advantage of a better schedule. And I think we're seeing the same with the Eagles. They're obviously in Super Bowl contention, but they've lost both their coordinators, and they're lucky to be 2-0. And I think the Giants roster is not as good as, I'd say, Seattle, and definitely obviously nowhere near as good as Philly. And I spoke about this with Adam and Andrew as well, when Adam was saying, like, Giants second. Never. Like, look how good the Cowboys are. Like, and again, going on to another one, Cowboys 49ers for me from this week on, barring any injuries, I'm locking that in as an NFC title game. I'm just convinced. I'm sold on both of those teams so much. If there's no injuries and the seedings work out, I think Dallas and San Fran will play in that NFC title game.
My
All
problem
the
is I have
takes are
this
coming
deep
out.
pit of
Sorry.
hatred for Dallas for some reason. I don't know. No, it's so good. I don't know what it is. I really struggle always put my arms around Dallas.
Their defense this year,
because I don't think Dak's that
different.
good. I just don't
No,
think
I
Dak's
agree.
that good.
Yeah.
But I don't hate outside the Steelers having a losing season, which
I might change my mind after last night.
I
But
can get why people think that. And well, no, as a fan, and you say bad quarterback play, I actually thought the quarterback play got better throughout the night. There was lots of Deshaun Watson got better throughout the night, and I thought Pickett got better throughout the night. But they both started off horrifically, and both our defenses did really turn up in the right moments, I suppose. The Giants have a lose record. Yeah, I can understand back that, especially if Saquon has any more injuries this year. They've really not looked very impressive. They did have a good comeback against Arizona, but it's Arizona. Who expects much of them?
Tankerzona. It was almost like, here, please take it.
and then I could buy the 49ers Cowboys being locked in for NFC. I could really buy that as well. I really think the 49ers. I've been pro 49ers going to Super Bowl since the start. I thought it was them and the Bengals. I've said that sort of since the season begun. I've always struggled to put my arms around Dallas and never really wanted to see much going on with Dallas because I don't particularly like the organization all that much. But they are good. And they got rid of their running back they took with a huge early round pick, and he got worse and worse, and they finally cut ties. They paid Dak eventually, though I don't think he's a great quarterback. He is serviceable for them. They've always had a strong O-line, always had the right players on the O-line. They just needed to keep them fit and healthy. And they've taken guys later in the draft. Ted Bediash, for one of them, was a late draft round pick, I remember, from what I remember. He was great for them. And this defense seems to have now been really turning up. And I think my problem is a bit like the Steelers. I still think, from a person who watches every down, when Watt isn't in our defense, I still think we're a good defense. But when Watt's in, we are an elite defense. I worry that if Parsons does go down injured, does that elitist defense suddenly crumble a little bit? Like DeMarcus Lawrence is still good, but he's older. I'm not fully sold on everyone in every single position as such. I think it does center around Mike Parsons and how brilliant he is. And some people would argue that's the same as the Steelers defense. But yeah, I would buy all them points over Jordan Love winning 2 rings.
Who's going to make the AFC title game? I'm curious because I don't have an answer for this, by the way, but we might as well throw it out there.
Somebody's doing well under the radar. I think I did actually write down his name for my shock MVPs, but the Ravens look very good. And the
Ravens do look good. I was about to say that. I would not be shocked if the Ravens.
He's my MVP pick. I didn't say it, but that was the one I put down when we were discussing earlier in the season.
And he looks. I mean, he's obviously the most dangerous running back in football, and I'm sure he's going to have a great running year again this year. But I don't know his ability to make passes and just slowly churn out a drive. I think the opening drive against the Bengals, I can't remember how many plays, but it was probably around 15 plays. Being able to do that is something different that I don't think we've seen that much from Lamar. So I'm excited about the Ravens. Obviously, I don't think they've taken as many headlines in the opening couple of weeks because of everyone else in the AFC or the teams that we've sort of hyped up not being as good. But yeah, just looking at their schedule, I think they could really start the season really well. And yeah, could easily be 6-7-0. Before they play the Bengals again in November. But really high on them. My
problem is already, like it's happened already, J.K. Dobbins injured.
Yeah.
Right? How many more? Because it happens every year. They just seem to get injuries after injury, especially in the running back position. But given that they've had new offensive coordinator this year, they do seem to be throwing the ball more. I think it's just Dobbins is just so unlucky. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he retired next year, because he's barely taken the field really in the last 2 years. We'll move on to my point. So we've sort of got a bit doom and gloom on some of these teams this week. To be fair, we were very positive about MVPs. When we went doom and gloom about season records and them not getting to the playoffs, I'm going to go with probably who could go 0-5 to start this season. So at the minute we have 9 0-2 teams: the Arizona Cardinals, Panthers, Bears, Broncos, Bengals, Texans, Chargers, Vikings, and Pats. I think 3 of these teams could go 0-5.
I know what you're going to say.
Sky, don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to, I haven't. I looked, and I was quite confident you'd get a win at least.
Yes.
So I am going to start with. It was more about who they're playing. Actually, I'm going to start with the Cardinals. Their next 3 games are against the Dallas Cowboys, the San Francisco 49ers, and Cincinnati Bengals. That's 2 losses already. In my book, that's 2 losses. They're not going to beat the Cowboys. They're not going to beat the 49ers. I think the Bengals by this point will have found some sort of form, just something at this point. They would at least find ways to win games. They only lost by 4 to the Commanders, only lost to the Giants by 3. It's the Commanders and the Giants. Let's not take too much from this. I don't think that's groundbreaking for this Arizona team. Josh Dobbs against Dak Prescott over this offense and against that defense of Micah Parsons. Going up against the 49ers team, who, like we've just been hyping up, going to the NFC Championship in a lot of people's minds. The Bengals surely will find some form. I just think they are a massive risk of going 0-5. And I think the fact of Kyler not being back in yet, they traded away Colt McCoy, who was serviceable for them. They brought in a new quarterback. I know we hate the big T word around here, but it feels like a little bit about it. It feels like maybe some eyes are pointing towards April. Just a little bit for the Arizona Cardinals. And I don't think Arizona Cardinals fans much mind that either, to be honest with you. Especially, they've also lost some big players. I think Buda Baker is now
Yeah.
Is he out for the year, or is he just out? Is he just on the pup? Is he out for 4 weeks?
I can't remember.
I'm sure I saw on injury reserve. It's not. I don't know if it's might be
maybe
4 games.
Maybe he's just 4 games pup. Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so back far on Twitter now. I won't be able to find it. Anyway, the Cardinals.
He could be on his way out as well. Anyway, I saw something on.
Yeah, he was massive trade rumors over the summer for him. I mean, I think
he's so good.
There is a massive reset moment going on in Arizona. And I mean, Kyler, maybe you're part of that, I suppose. I'm really not sure. But I think Cowboys 49ers, they're losing them games. I don't think there's a hoping chance that they win either of them. The Bengals game, at the minute we could say it could go either way. I think Bengals will find some form by then. Next is the Houston Texans, and that pains me a little bit because I really loved CJ Stroud's player of the weekend. I thought he was very, very good, very accurate. He did very well in fantasy football for a lot of people out there, though I benched him. And he seemed to have a bit of control. And I really want Will Anderson to succeed because I think, you've seen a rookie come out in the first year. I always think I want to see them do really well. I just still think there's a lot going on there. I mean, the Texans feel almost like a team with their new head coach, DeMeco Ryans, that it could be a bit of a Zach Taylor situation where he might get hounded first year and hopefully they stick with him and suddenly he gets the players in he needs. Texas no tax. You talk about people want to go to Green Bay free agency. When you've got the Houston Texans who have got a young quarterback, they've got money to spend. It's a no tax state with a coach that is a proven defensive coach as well. He will get his defense going, I think, at some point. That team could go from being very poor to being very positive in quite a short journey. I think that could be really interesting. But they're playing the Jags, they're playing the Steelers, and they're playing the Falcons. I think the Jags are on a roll at the minute. I think I really like the way they're playing, but they could get pipped. The Steelers, I just think our defense will overwhelm their rookie quarterback. I don't think this is about the Steelers being better than the Texans. I just think it's just too good a defense going against a player who won't know what to do. I think he's just it's a lack of experience game for him. And then the Falcons, I don't think people are surprised by what they're doing because everyone thought Bijan Robinson was going to be this phenomenon, and he is. But their defense is playing at an all right level as well. I think that could be the game that edges whether they do or don't. I don't think I've seen enough from this Texans team yet where I can confidently see where the wins are going to come from. I don't think this is going to be like forever for the Texans. Like I said, I think this could really be a team that flips it all around very soon. It's just getting CJ Stroud to adapt to the NFL, into the NFL game. I think he's more than capable of doing it, and hopefully staying fit as well, which is a big key thing. And then my last one is actually the Carolina Panthers. They're playing next to the Seattle Seahawks, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Detroit Lions. I think that's a really tough schedule, really tough. Now, the only thing I do have to admit out of all these three teams, I've not checked whether it's home or away. I haven't checked that. I am quite strong advocate for teams having good home records for the most part whenever I've done predictions in the past. They lost by 14 to the Falcons. They did lose the 3 to the Saints. Monday night game, open season, a divisional rival. I think them sort of games do end up close. The Seahawks, I think, are playing at a very good level. Very, very good level. I think they're going to maybe be one of them teams that we're very early on going to say is going to go to the playoffs. DK Metcalf, hopefully, with this rib injury, it sounds like it's not too serious. Let's hope it doesn't get more serious if anything else happens. But they seem to have basically come back to the same level that they ended last season on, it feels like. The running game is pretty decent. The defense is making some good plays. Devin Witherspoon, the other game, seem to play very well as well. So the rookies are playing well. I mean, the Vikings by this point find a bit of form as well. And then when I look at it, I look at their offense with Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins being a way better quarterback. Their defense, I could argue, is not as good as the Panthers on paper. I could definitely argue that. But I know that the Panthers have also just lost Shaq. I think they've lost Shaq Thompson for the year as well, who is he's their kingpin. He is their quarterback of the defense. So that's going to be really tough for the Panthers. And then the Lions, I just got a good feeling about the Lions, man. I just feel like they are winning games and they're doing it in style. And they've came close against the Seahawks, but they got back in there, got to overtime. A lot happened in that game, but I think the Panthers, if it's in the Lions' backyard, I need to double check that. If it is in the Lions' backyard, I think they're definitely going to lose it. It's Lions. I think if we're going to forfeit with the Panthers, I think that city's re-energized at the minute. Like that city is rocking and pumping for that team in a town that they're obviously very proud supporters, but have not exactly had much to cheer about for a long time. And we said it earlier, Jared Goff is playing at a real top level at the minute, real top level. I mean, I know they're going to lose Montgomery for a couple of weeks. He might be back in by this point. We're not really sure of his injury just yet, but you might see Jahmyr Gibbs just running up and burning up. I mean, he could have a really impressive next 3-4 weeks if Montgomery doesn't come back or the injury lingers. I just struggled with every other team. I sort of went, I could argue a win there. I could argue a win for one or two of these games. Certainly, I think the Texans Falcons game, and the Texans Steelers game, I could argue. I just don't think outside of that. I think we're now seeing a trend with some of these teams, and there will be definitely opportunities for these teams to pick people, but I'm worried for all three of these teams at the minute.
Couldn't agree more with the picks you've made. I think we don't like to mention the word tanking, do we? But the Cardinals.
Even I've embraced it now, Johnny. It's too obvious by them.
I actually
that's my problem in a way. It's too obvious. Like this is too obvious.
Because I think the defense played quite well against the Commanders, but they chucked it away. Obviously, no offense, Cardinals fans, I didn't watch too much of the first half against the Giants, but they must have played incredibly well to get up to a 20-odd lead against the Giants. They're throwing games away, man, and I don't know. It's obviously frustrating, but I think they've been better than what I expected, even though they're 0-2. The other team that I think I'd just throw in there, I think is the Bears. I think I've just not been impressed at all. And we've mentioned it, the Justin Fields hype trade has taken a bit of a halt, and I just can't really get excited about anything else around the team, unfortunately. Obviously, you mentioned the DJ Moore potential injury, but I don't think there's too much to get excited about weapons wise on that offensive team. So they're another team I think could easily slip to an 0-5 record over the coming weeks. I think they've got games against the Chiefs. I can't remember who else, but maybe the Commanders as well. So yeah, very, very concerning for those. I think the Texans will be all right, to be honest. CJ Stroud, I think Anthony Richardson's always been, the old play's been fantastic, but I think CJ Stroud's probably been the best rookie QB that we've seen so far in the league. Been really impressed by him. So I can see the Texans having, I think, winning around 4 or 5 games this year. I think they could sneak a few, particularly the divisional games against the Colts and my mind's gone blank. Who's in the AFC South? Not the
Jags
and
Texans,
mine's gone blank as well.
Colts, and
Titans.
Titans. They're going under the radar that much anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been quite competitive actually.
But yeah, I'll hand over to you, Sky, after my NFL knowledge has been showed up on an NFL podcast.
And about 5 minutes ago, I was thinking about the Titans for some reason, thinking about when we keep talking about games of the week, like they've just been a weird one where the way I think we all agreed that Vrabel's good head coach, but they're a weird team. But I think I agree with Freddie. But when you brought this subject up about 0-5, the Chargers and Vikings are playing this week, and obviously they're both 0-2, right? I think it's a bigger deal, obviously, for the Chargers because they're in the AFC. If they lose that, they're playing the Raiders. Now, usually I talk down on the Raiders, but it's a divisional game, so that can go anyway. And then they're playing Dallas. I don't think that they would be 0-5, but it wouldn't look good if they didn't beat the Vikings this week because everyone's going to...
Let me pose a question. Out of the 9 teams I said, which I'll repeat being Cardinals, Panthers, Bears, Broncos, Bengals, Texans, Chargers, Vikings, and Patriots, which team would it be universally where people would be like, that is a disgrace from this team? Like, they absolutely... How have they got to 0-5? Like, what is the one where people are just like pulling their hair out? Like, how has this happened?
Probably the Chargers. If anybody's like me and they've been hyped up that much in the off season, or maybe the Bears.
You don't think about the Vikings getting to the playoffs now in the deep playoff from last year?
I think they got called out quite. I disagreed with it, and I think they will still have a good season. But they were one team that everyone was talking up the Bears, everyone was talking up the Lions, everyone was talking down on Kirk Cousins and just being, he's good on Netflix, And I think we all kind of, especially me, I feel like I talked them up quite well and said a bit harsh on them considering they had 13 wins last season. So yeah, I think people would be shocked, but I think enough people criticize them in the off season, they'd be like, I was right about that. Whereas, like we said with Justin Herbert, his supporters, me included, are so sold on him that if a Justin Herbert-led team was 0-5, I think Twitter would have a meltdown.
Well, I'm hoping.
Sorry.
I'm hoping the Vikings go 0-5, so the Vikings will trade Cousins' massive contract to the Jets because obviously we need a quarterback, and he's someone that's been rumored to be willing to go outside.
I like Kirk Cousins. Don't say that. Very cool though.
Wow. The Jets just collecting former NFC North quarterbacks for fun. That would be good. And where did Zach Wilson play college?
BYU, did he?
Did he? BYU.
Yeah.
Where's BYU in the country?
It is in Utah. Of course, it's Utah. Yeah, because he's a Utah boy.
Yeah, Brigham Young. Okay, so it's not. I was about to say if it was a cold weather like Michigan or so it weren't in Michigan. I know it weren't, but I couldn't remember where Brigham Young is. Are you a little bit worried, Sky?
About the Chargers?
No, about the Pats.
Oh no. No. You know what? The last time we went 0-2, we won the Super Bowl to start the season. Brady's that's not me saying. I think, very quickly on the Patriots. Obviously, we're playing Johnny's Jets this week. Good luck. Sure it'll be a great game. And I'll be there, which is super exciting. So can't wait for that.
Very exciting.
But I feel like Mac Jones, I'm happy for him because he's played so well in the first 2 games. And even I've made a few jokes on the show and here and there. But I think He's bought into Bill O'Brien. He's played well against good Eagles defense. We should have never been close against Miami, and he got better as the game went on. And when you've got like Smith-Schuster as your wide receiver one, I mean, he only got. I'm not a fan, as I said many times. He only got paid because Mahomes was throwing him the ball last season, and he's barely been used this season by us already. I'm feeling, when I say confident, like we'll be competitive throughout the season. But I think, like I said, when we were doing the predictions, I couldn't place us anywhere between, say, 6 wins and 9 wins. The games have been close so far. I guess most people now would lean towards a 6 or 7, but it's a Bill Belichick-led team, so we'll just see how it goes.
Well, until then, I'm sure Scott will have a fantastic time at the game in Asbate in London. In America.
They're almost in London. Well, not.
Man, I know. For anyone who's been watching, this episode has been probably real painful because our trails of thoughts have just been so bad. Like, so bad.
Creative thinking.
We're just a bit drained. We're just a little bit drained. It's been a long weekend. It's okay. We'll be back with the energy next week. Don't you worry about that. Sky, Johnny, thank you again for joining me. We'll see you guys all very soon. Have a good rest of your week. See ya.